anyway, I was doing some consulting for Nostalgia Ventures and was being asked to consult on various matters at times for Condé Nast, you know, as a paid consultant on the Shadow of Doc Savage and such. And at one time, there was a company called Black Mask that was doing bootleg editions of the Shadow of Doc Savage and would not stop and had to be sued. And Condé Nast, you know, some people think, you know, very negatively of Condé Nast. I find them to be a wonderful company. They have to protect their rights and their trademarks. And one wonderful thing I'll tell you before I started publishing these is I got an email from Condé Nast's attorney, and he said, "You have current contact information for Litzka and Robert Gibson, the widow and son of Walter Gibson." And I said, "Well, Litzka died a few years ago. I have contact information for Robert." I said, "Why do you want to contact him?" He said, and Condé Nast's attorney told me, "Well, Condé Nast is aware that it had an oral agreement during Walter Gibson's life to split reprint royalties on his novels with him, his Shadow novels 50-50. And there doesn't appear to be anything in that oral agreement that pertained to after his death. But Condé Nast has decided it wanted to continue honoring it anyway. So half the royalty money I send Condé Nast for the reprinting of the Shadow novels goes to Walter Gibson's family. And that is, you know, if you know how Marvel Comics has treated Jack Kirby or, you know, his heirs, I mean, it's a pretty nice story. And anyway, when they were having trouble with bootleg editions, Condé Nast finally decided, and I mean, it's a problem where this is, quite honestly, fairly small potatoes for them. And I mean, their attorney is a partner in a law practice whose address is at number 4 Times Square.
It's Jerry, right?
Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
And Jerry's a very nice guy. And he told me that they had decided that the best way to perhaps fight bootleg editions was to license someone to do, you know, good editions, and asked who I'd recommend. And I said, well, if you remember, I did a presentation on this subject about how I'd like to publish Shadow reprints. And I delivered it to you last October when I had a meeting with you in the city. And he said, but you aren't a publisher. And I said, well, hey, I was an assistant production manager at DC Comics. I've done editorial work. I know how Diamond works. You know, the person who owns Diamond, Steve Juppy, was a friend of mine. When I was buying comics from him when he was doing this Phil Sewin second Sunday shows in Manhattan, you know, one-day comic shows. And I said Nostalgia Ventures is interested in going in with me, and they can handle things. They have experience at selling books to radio show collections to Barnes & Noble and Borders and Sam's Club and Walmart and such. So I got it. And Condé Nast, I know, is very happy with the books. I think I'm very proud. I think the work we do on the books, myself and Will and Michael Piper, who helps restore the covers, who's a Doc Savage fan in San Antonio. I think the work shows. I think, you know, the amount of work we put into the historical articles and the extra features. You know, this brings into my, you know, playing my background as a historian of popular culture and comics and radio and pulps, that I didn't want to just do straight reprints. I wanted to put it in historical context and supplement the story, and if there's background, you know, I try and include it, and I think it enriches the reading experience. I think I was also intelligent enough to enlist Will Murray, who is one of the real experts, not just on Doc Savage, but Will is such an expert on the history of pulp fiction and such. Of course, extremely talented too. I mean, you know, as you know, he's written now 11 new Doc Savage novels under license from Condé Nast, 7 published by Bantam. He wrote 42 Destroyer novels. He wrote the Mars Attacks novels. He wrote a Nick Fury novel that came out the year before 9/11, which planes are used to destroy to crash into the World Trade Towers. As I said, I also got to work with so many of the wonderful people from the world of old-time radio. Directed a number of Shadowcast reunions, later with John Archer as the Shadow. Did 2 Doc Savage recreations years ago at radio conventions, both of which had Fred Foy, the wonderful voice who said, "A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust," on the Lone Ranger, and Willis also understudied the Lone Ranger. But in the first of those, I had Monk Mayfair played by Earl George, who played Monk Mayfair in the 1943 Doc Savage radio series. And then I think both of them I had Bob Lyons, who was the announcer on the NPR Doc Savage series. So,
Which ones did you do? Which story?
one of them was a 1943 show in which, kind of like Resurrection Day, a scientist brings a mummy back to life. And it's, afterwards, Ray Erlenborn, who was a wonderful sound effects man and worked on Burns and Allen and Al Pierce and worked on the Sonny and Cher TV show and Red Skelton TV show and such. But Ray came after and said, "Oh, we've got to do more shows like that." And he was in the audience. And I said, "That was a terrible script." And I said, "Yeah, but it was a great terrible script." And meaning that, yeah, it was really hokey. But it had Nazis, it had a mummy brought back to life, it had a mad scientist, it had all sorts of roles the actors and the sound effects men could really chew the scenery with. And the other one I did was the largely Monk Mayfair show. And it was from the 34 series, from a script by Lester Dent, in which, Monk is kidnapped by one of the 2 stories that inspired the 1948 Doc Savage novel, The Swooning Lady. Kez, could you go back behind and get those Dayton Xeroxes if you could find them? They're in one of the boxes back there. Talking about some of the extra things, and I really try and go, and produce, try and give extras. I try and do much more than, the minimum, to try and make these books as informative and as special as possible. And when I did Doc Savage, I've had forwards from the Shadow books by Ian Wilson and Dick Ayers and Mark Wilson, the magician, and Harlan Ellison and Ed Cartier, the Shadow and Doc Savage interior artist, and Everett Raymond Kinsler and Margot Stevenson, who played Margolene. I had an unpublished Doc Savage forward by Lester Dent on the origins of Doc Savage. I had a unpublished Shadow forward by Walter Gibson that I just found a manuscript that had never been published. Walter's files and licensed the rights from his family. Of course, there are a lot of Doc Savage novels where we've done restored manuscript editions, because there was an editor named Morris Ogden Jones, who was John Nanovich's assistant, one of his assistants at Street and Smith. And Morris Ogden Jones loved to cut in short novels for a reason I can't figure out. Because always to get an extra short story in the back. But the thing was, Shadow and Doc, Walter Gibson and Lester Dent were paid flat rates per novel, regardless of length. They weren't per word writer. They got paid the same for a 50,000 word novel as a 40,000 or a 35,000 or a 55 or 60,000. I think it's, maybe under some of the books are at the top. It's in one of the boxes right around there, I think. So, if you cut a story out and you had to buy 5,000 word short story, you had to pay, even at a cent a word, $50 more. That, to cover the 5,000 words you cut out, that you weren't saving any money. So I can't quite figure why Jones did that. He tried it once on a Gibson Shadow novel and found when he got to the end that he had to restore everything that he cut, because Gibson's novels were so tightly plotted and so intricate, and things weren't in Gibson's novels just to pad or fill it. You know, you could take a chapter of Monk and Ham squabbling or something and not affect the plot, but he, as he said, he found he could not do that with a Gibson novel. But he did that frequently with Doc Savage novels. And so anyway, when I did, you know, as you know, we've restored a lot of novels. There are 3 of them, just 3 of them.
Yes.
When you, we've done a number of restored manuscript editions, the longest of which was Mystery Under the Sea, where we restored 7,000 words. And I think, you know, the novel as printed was like 33,000, it was written at 40, or, you know, it was 40 and had been 47. That's a substantial, that was 15% of the novel that no one had gotten a chance to read in print before. So, I mean, if you read the Bantam reprints or even the original pulps, and often the Bantam would cut from near the back so it would fit in the book. So our Sanctum Book reprints are often longer, and there was half a page in Doc's Flea Run. There were, you know, and then the various secret entrances to and from Doc's headquarters. There was a full chapter cut, 2 half chapters cut. So I'm just saying there are, you know, that's one of the things I'm very proud of. When we don't try and undo John Nanovich's editorial work. You know, we really try and judge, you know, was this cut for space, and if so. And there have been cases in The Shadow and Doc Savage where we found artwork that had been cut. An illustration from Partners of Peril. By the way, historically, and I have copies of it here for sale, but I think the most historically important book I published is Volume 9 of The Shadow, which I reprinted Partners of Peril. And that was the Shadow novel that was blatantly plagiarized start to finish for the first Batman comic book story in Detective 27. And other than the costume and the name Batman, there is nothing in the first Batman story that was not taken bodily from the Shadow novel. You know, I really strongly believe that in addition to Bodkine, not only should Bill Finger's name be added as co-creator for his writer, but I think Walter Gibson and Ted Tinsley's names belong as co-creators of Batman too.